Hello, Harmony class, and welcome back to our continuing discussion of Chapter 8, more contrapuntal expansions, inversions of 5/7 leading tone seventh chords. This is part 2. We're going to talk about part writing considerations. So first, let's review our root position, dominant seventh chord, and everything we have to keep in mind for part writing. So with our 5/7 chord, we have two main tendency tones. We have our leading tone, which is going to want to resolve to tonic upward by step. And we have the chordal seventh, that fourth scale degree. And that fourth scale degree is going to want to resolve downward by step. Then our root here in the bass is going to move to the root in the tonic triad, and then that fifth of the chord is going to also want to resolve generally down to that root of the tonic triad. Now, when we resolve that, a complete 5/7 chord, and we resolve everything appropriately, we end up with an incomplete tonic triad. However, we can get a complete tonic triad by omitting the fifth in our 5/7 chord, allowing us a second root to hold over as a common tone. And so that will give us a complete tonic triad. The other thing that we can do is if we start with a complete dominant seventh chord, we can move to a complete tonic triad as long as our leading tone is in an inner voice. And then we can move that leading tone to our fifth scale degree instead of resolving it to tonic. But we can only do that when it's in an inner voice. We can't do that when it's in an outer voice. All right, so when we're voice leading, when we're using our inversions of 5/7, our inversions of our dominant seventh chord, we're going to want to use complete chords. We're not going to omit the fifth. We're going to keep everything full. So there's not going to be any doubling. You're going to have one of each note. The nice thing about that is if you're not doubling anything, you're not going to end up with parallel octaves. You will have to still watch out for the fifths, but there's not going to be any chance of parallel octaves as long as you are using complete chords here. And then we want to resolve our tendency tones as usual. Our seventh moving down by step and our leading tone up to tonic, except in an inner voice, you can go to the fifth scale degree. All right, so let's look at each of these. We've got our 5/6/5, our first inversion here, and this is acting as a neighbor chord. And this is two possible soprano lines here. The first, we're preparing the seventh via a passing motion through that seventh from fifth scale degree down to the third scale degree. And then in the second one, we are using a neighbor motion to prepare the seventh. So either way, the seventh in these cases is being prepared by a step. Then you'll notice in the tenor in both of these examples, we're holding that G through as a common tone all the way through. And this is something that happens frequently in these, is that we have that G as a common anchor. We just hold it there, and it's kind of an anchor that everything else can pivot and move around. All right, and then for a 5/4/3, there's a little bit more to think about here. So we have this as a passing chord. In these examples, we have a passing chord with the basses descending. And we can easily use our parallel tenths moving down here. We're passing through the seventh down to the third scale degree, just like before. And again, we still have that G as an anchor. In the next example, we're using neighbor motion to prepare that seventh, again, just as we did with the 5/6/5. And that G is an anchor, just this time we have neighbor motion, or we have passing motion in the bass. And then finally, you don't necessarily have to prepare that seventh by step. It can sometimes be really striking to leap up to it, especially as part of the melody. And so here's an example where we're leaping up to that seventh and then resolving everything appropriately. All right, one thing you'll notice in the first two examples where we're moving by step to that seventh chord is that something other than our tonic is doubled. Something other than our root is doubled in each of these 1/6 chords. In the first one, we have our fifth of the chord that's doubled, and in the second one, we have the third of the chord that's doubled. So you're going to look for alternative doublings on some of these, and this allows us to get that common tone moving across against that contrapuntal motion. All right, and then here's that special case we talked about last time. We have the bass ascending in a passing motion, and then we also have the soprano ascending in passing motion through the seventh of the chord, but it continues upward. And because we have this strong sense of parallel tense between the soprano and bass, this is okay. You can do this. This is fine. This is one of the few exceptions to resolving the seventh of the chord. And even so, we get these leading tone, or these common tone here again in the tenor, and that leading tone resolving appropriately in the alto. Okay, and here we have our 5/4/2, pretty straightforward again. We're just resolving this just like a regular 5/7 chord, and you can either approach by leap as a neighbor tone or as a passing tone between 5 and 5/4/2. Okay, nothing real out of the ordinary or anything you have to watch out for there that you aren't already when you're working with your 5/7 chords. All right. So moving on to our leading tone chords, our leading tone seventh chords. So these are some considerations we need to keep in mind. We want to approach the seventh. We want to approach the seventh of the chord by step or by common tone. So we want to prepare that seventh, that sixth scale degree, really well. And then every member of the chord is a tendency tone. So our leading tone, of course, our seventh scale degree is going to want to move up to tonic. And our fourth scale degree, which was our seventh in our 5/7 chords, it's going to want to move down to our third scale degree again here. Our second scale degree is going to want to either move up to 3 or down to tonic. And our sixth scale degree is going to want to move down to our fifth scale degree. And so in this way, we get both of those interlocking tritones resolving appropriately. Scale degree 7 and 4 resolving inward, and scale degree 2 and 6 resolving inward there. And what happens is that the third scale degree is frequently doubled in the tonic triad that follows, because if you look, we've got our second scale degree and our fourth scale degree moving towards that third scale degree to resolve everything appropriately. All right, so here's some examples of doing that. So here's our root position, everything moving to the place it needs to, everything moving by step. So we want to keep track of those tritones. So here the bass and alto are moving in contrary motion, and the tenor and soprano are moving in contrary motion to resolve those tritones. And we've got the same consideration here with our first inversion chord, moving from 7 diminished 6/5 to 1/6. everything resolving appropriately. Our tritone B and F resolving inward here, and D to A flat resolving inward. And you see in each of these examples, we've got that third scale degree doubled in that tonic triad. All right, and then our other examples here, we've got a 7 diminished 4-3, everything resolving this F to be natural, resolving in contrary motion outward, and then our D and A flat resolving by contrary motion, still getting that third scale degree doubled. And then here's our 7 diminished 4-2. We have as a neighbor chord or a passing chord for this 5 chord. And so we get that 7th here in the bass resolving downward, and then we're just holding the rest of these as common tones because we do have 3 common tones between them. So that bass is where that neighbor motion is really going to happen, and this is deriving out of that. Okay. And so that's our fully diminished 7th chords. And again, our half diminished doesn't occur in inversion quite as frequently as it does in root position. And so it's going to resolve in much the same way as our fully diminished counterpart does. So we have the tritone between the F and the B here resolving to C and E, resolving in contrary motion. And then we have our other 2 voices resolving in contrary motion. Now where this third scale degree here, or the second scale degree here, the third of the chord, in our fully diminished, we can technically move it down to our tonic, have unequal fifths, and that'd be all right. In this case, we want to really be watching out how we resolve that. That really needs to resolve in contrary motion here, because otherwise you're in danger of getting parallel perfect intervals. Because this is not a tritone anymore. This D to A here is actually a perfect fifth. So you have to watch out how you treat that. But if you treat each of these fifths, this diminished fifth and this perfect fifth, in contrary motion, you will end up in a good position. All right, so in summary, we're going to be holding our common tones again in that, especially this 5/7 chords. We have that fifth scale degree as an anchor through all of those. We want to resolve our tendency tones, sevenths and leading tones especially. We want to watch for parallel fifths and our 7 half diminished 7. And you frequently might need to double something other than the root in the tonic triads that surround these. So keep an eye out for that. All right. And so that concludes our discussion of Chapter 8. And so I look forward to seeing you all in class next week, and have a good week.